In a world where celebrity children are expected to be seen, followed, and celebrated, one name has quietly moved in the opposite direction. That name is Maddox Jolie-Pitt. For years, he stood at the center of one of the most watched families in Hollywood. As the eldest son of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, Maddox was never just another celebrity child. He was the beginning of the story. The first chapter in a family that would later become a global symbol. But over time, something began to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly. While the world continued watching everything around the Jolie-Pitt family, Maddox seemed to slowly step out of the frame. No interviews, no attempt to build a public identity, no visible interest in becoming part of the spotlight that surrounded him since childhood. And then, in early 2026, people noticed something small that seemed to say something very big. In the credits of the film Couture, he was listed as Maddox Jolie, not Maddox Jolie-Pitt, just Maddox Jolie. It looked like a minor detail. But in a family like this, small details rarely stay small, because this is where the story changes. The question is no longer just where Maddox is. The question is why he seems to be quietly stepping away from everything the world expected him to become. And the answer may have started much earlier than people think. Before the fame, before the headlines, before the world became obsessed with the Jolie-Pitt family, there was just one moment that changed everything. It was the moment Angelina Jolie adopted a young boy from Cambodia in 2002. That boy was Maddox Jolie-Pitt. And what makes his story different from the very beginning is this. Maddox was not born into fame. He was not introduced to the world as a celebrity child. He was the reason the story began at all. Because before Brad Pitt became part of the picture, before the family became a global phenomenon, Maddox was already there. He was the first. The emotional starting point. The moment that transformed Angelina Jolie from a global movie star into a mother. And that matters more than it seems. Because growing up as the first child in a family like this is very different from growing up as one of many. Maddox did not enter an already built world of fame. He grew up as that world was being created around him. And that kind of beginning shapes a person in ways that are not always visible. It creates a different relationship with attention, a different relationship with identity, and perhaps a different relationship with what it means to be seen. Because this is where something subtle begins to form. While the world was building a narrative around the Jolie-Pitt family, Maddox may have been developing a very different perspective from the inside, and that difference would only become more visible as he got older. From the outside, Maddox's life could have followed a very predictable path. Many children raised in high-profile families eventually move toward visibility. They act, they model, they build social media presence. They become part of the public narrative. But Maddox never seemed interested in that version of the story. Instead, a pattern began to emerge, a quiet one. While others moved closer to the spotlight, he moved further away from it. While others built public identities, he appeared to protect his private one. And that pattern becomes even more interesting when you look at the choices he made. Because he did not walk away from the world he grew up in. He simply chose a different position within it. Not in front of the camera, but behind it. He worked on projects like First They Killed My Father, a film deeply connected to Cambodia, the place where his life began. A project that was not about fame, but about history, memory, and identity. Later, he continued working behind the scenes on Maria, and then Couture, taking on roles that kept him close to filmmaking, but far from public attention. That choice matters, because it suggests something very specific. Maddox did not reject Hollywood. He refused to perform it. And perhaps even more telling is what he chose not to do. He did not turn his last name into a brand. He did not build a public persona. He did not try to become visible in the way people expected. The less he showed, the more people began to wonder. And this is where the story becomes more complicated. Because in a family defined by visibility, choosing silence is never just silence. It is a decision. At some point, the story of the Jolie-Pitt family began to change. What once looked like unity started to feel more complex, more private, more difficult to fully understand from the outside. And within that shift, one name was often mentioned first: Maddox Jolie-Pitt. But the most important part of this story is not to repeat what has never been fully confirmed. It is to focus on what can be seen. And what can be seen is a pattern of distance. Something changed, not in a single moment, but over time. And that change appears to have shaped the way Maddox presents himself to the world today. Because distance does not always mean conflict. Sometimes it means control. Control over identity. Control over visibility. Control over how much of your life becomes public. And in a family where almost everything has been watched, discussed, and analyzed for years, that kind of control becomes incredibly significant. Even something as small as a name in film credits begins to carry weight in that context. Maddox Jolie, not Jolie-Pitt. A small shift, but one that suggests something deeper. Not necessarily a rejection of the past, but a redefinition of the future. So where is Maddox now? The clearer answer may not be a place, but a direction. He appears to be building a life that is intentionally quiet, not disconnected from the world he grew up in, but no longer defined by it. He is still close to film, still connected to storytelling, still part of a creative environment that shaped much of his life, but he is choosing to exist within that world on his own terms. Without spectacle, without constant visibility, without turning his identity into something performative. And maybe that is the most important shift of all. Because Maddox was once known as the son who changed Angelina Jolie's life forever. But now, as an adult, he seems to be doing something just as significant. He is quietly changing his own. From Cambodia to Hollywood. From the beginning of a global family story to a life that now feels increasingly personal. Maddox's journey has never followed the path people expected. And perhaps that is exactly the point. Because in a world that watches everything, the most powerful decision might not be to step into the spotlight, but to step away from it and choose instead how you want to be seen, or not seen at all.